The all levels of who we are is a inner child, not the inner child, because we already are a child. So inside, but the inside is everything of all levels. We have to start understanding what that means. We have to stop looking at age. We have to look at lines of communication, lines of space time through the inner child, how the inner child eats, how the inner child sleeps, how the inner child sits, how the inner child does this, how the inner child does that. Understand? I mean, really be you as a child. It doesn't matter in specification. Yes, generals, lines of screening adaptations. Yes, I'm 55, but I'm not 55. See, that's the thing. I don't see myself as 55 because there's no age category. Okay, there's no central system of anything inside, just me as a child. But the formation locations, I'm not a child. I have no formations of anything because I'm kind of like the construct of everything you see through mass, which is everything through an equation. Like I said, if you walk into a structure of a building, that's me. You walk into rooms of mass, that's me. Okay? Your central system is a figuration of yourself, which is a inner child. But I'm the mass of space. I'm the mass of time. I'm the mass of clocking. Of time exists and time doesn't exist. Okay? Understanding yourself in set position locations. There's no age category. There's no month. There's no year. There's no past. There's present. There's no future. Just you in the center operation of you, of nothing. The game modificates lines of communication, lines of nothing. Why? Because the game's already done. So if the game's already done, what are we talking about? How do you think General created the game in the first place? Is understanding how to see yourself as a child on a board game, going to the levels, understanding the Jumanji of this, understanding how to see this, understanding how to see that, understanding how to play, understanding the instructions, understanding the characters and the players that you bring in the game as a child. Because everything else around you is a child too. It's a formation. It's little kids running around in space trying to figure out who they are. That's all this is. Nothing else through space modification. All right. Now, once you understand the game modules that you're in, you understand the game of identification that you're in. Because it's about you controlling the game level that you already have been in. And that position location comes into the lines of the mind that sets you free. Setting lines of communication is focusing on nothing, shows you everything. So if the game is already done, what is left to decide? Nothing. The central system of you is nothing. So getting into that position, you have to understand how to use that through modifications. And that makes a lot more sense now because I see myself always as a formation, as a child, an inner core that puts all communications in the modification system and understanding what I'm seeing as myself as a child, guys. Okay? Child in line screen adaptation to its position locations, right? The compute systems, the home beacon lights, the intelligence, the levels of direction. Okay? A division or dimension. Child. Inner child. It's the inner core. It's the intelligence, all right? To the any lines is communicate to its system, to its new, of its circuits lines, the core track and appearance, of its network, location setting, to its energy lines, of its frame memory. Inner child, right? You process how you want to process in that position. But the game modulation is done. All you have to do is just go through the line screen line adaptations all over again in the mind. The conception line screen adaptation puts you in position lines of track calculation system. Now, as you know, we're going through formation locations of grid lines into all levels of vapor because my voice is changing. It's getting ready to into that attractions. Everything the clocking sequence is already done. Everything to time sequence is already done. Everything through time clocking is already done. Everything through foundation of your DNA is already done. Everything's done. So the only thing you focus on is nothing. That shows you everything. Okay? The center operation of you, okay, is understanding the 100% capacity that you have in the game levels that you're in. Okay? So it's kind of like this interactions. This is you. Let's get a modification, right? We're getting track communication to a system, right? All right, so we have blocking screens, direct signals, modification lines of platforms, and track location. Okay? All right. So setting lines of data, process calculation lines, screen lines, adaptation lines. Let's say you roll 3. Okay. You have a dice. You roll 3. Okay? Sets communication lines of 2 block centers and 2 communication lines. Each line has 2 cubes, right? Sets lines of communication lines of travels. Inline communications. Setting core line interference of snake eyes and travel. Okay? Or track division lines of 2 lines and 1 line sight line high center interference, right? In cases. So you go on the core track interference of 1, 2, and 3. Okay? In the game mode that you're in. The higher sequence that you go through patterns, the more you come into line, position, location, nothing, and don't focus on anything. In line communication, focus on all of what comes back to you through attraction. Your body comes in magnetic lines of force recognition. Sets calculation lines, screen lines, adaptation setting, puts all process communicates to your system through a black hole and track location. Okay, so everything in attraction comes to you through formation, right? It comes to you, so you don't chase anything. Okay, you're not running towards something because you're already there. You're not going there because you're already there. You don't need to do anything because you're already there. Because all you're doing now is coming in an adaptation system locations that never exist in the first place. And then you realize if I'm the center of everything and center of nothing, that means nothing of everything is not in existence. So if nothing's in existence, there's nothing left to talk about, is there? The only thing you focus on is just you, right? The game itself is the psychological of the reset. Okay? So it doesn't really exist. Okay? So because the team's understanding that now, they're understanding more levels of the game that they're in is the game of themselves, which is the inner child of themselves. That's the game. That's the psychological. So this helps you to adapt how to understand how to get it in your position locations, how to use your hardware and your software in set position. Understanding how to use your brain as the computer of what it is. Okay? That's very powerful, what you guys are coming in provision of as cycles. All right? Directing lines of communication lines of centers puts all communicates to its system all through travel. Now, position lines of center locates to its system. Travel point lines of graph, calculation lines of triangulation lines of 3 patterns. Set position location in 1 center. Set correlation lines of 3 track locations into 4 settings of travel. Pac-Man. Okay? Sets communication lines of ground centers in line position location to its system all through tractions. Directing lines, modifications, screen lines, adaptation lines of surface, and set position location of ghost. Pac-Man and Ghost. All right? So it's really interesting. Everything's just a game itself, right? The psychological system is basically putting you back into the center of nothing because there's nothing that exists in your system because the game itself doesn't exist, guys. Okay, this is about a psychological system. For me to explain the brain, you want to understand it. The complexity is too complicated. For me to get you understanding the cranial, for you to understand the position of the cerebral, or anything in the cortex, or sim line connection setting, or anything through endorphin, or anything in track line communication system, or how it works in lines of communications. So getting at that position locations, that's how I created it through the game itself. So it's about you understanding the inner core of you, of the inner child of you. That's the only thing that exists. Nothing else. Okay? So understanding the psychological is understanding the psychosis. And where the psychosis comes from is all levels of set position of nothing. Because all you're doing in position is trying to reframe your systems in all levels of settings. Realize I've always been in the VR system. So what I created is just a game. Okay, that's the only way I can get you guys into truth. That's the only way you guys can get into adaptability. That's the only way you guys can get in console. That's the only way you guys can get in navigation and travel. That's the only way you can understand how to use your minds of the game that you're in. It's all psychological. And then once you reach that and at lines of communication, you come in all calculation lines and screen lines adaptation to its resistance. Okay, having no resistance of anything. And then you actually understand the game itself is just you. So you prolong like nothing happened. It never existed, right? So it's really interesting, isn't it? Because the game itself is the game of life. Now, get into that communications, understanding the life system and track location, which is your power cell. Okay, it's your support system. It's your health system. It's your immune system. It's your dietary system. It's your nervous system. It's your vagus nervous system. Okay, it's your vital points, it's your pressure points, it's everything in set position inside correlation setting track lines communicate to its system. So the inner child knows everything inside through its central system and its instruments, which is extremely powerful to use in lines of communication setting to the game that you are. Okay, the game that you are, not the game that you're in. See, that's what you're in position of. When you get in lines of activation online, you're in the game, okay? In position locations, right? Not the game you are, right? The team's trying to register that pattern. It's trying to understand its positional vortex. It's trying to understand it through its visionary cortex. It's trying to understand it through its own set position of its own game modulation system, right? Not that it's in, of what it is where you are. Getting out of the communication setting puts you at lines of correlation setting. You know, the most powerful thing in position all levels to do in the game that you're in track location is setting your mind free. Let me say that again. Setting your mind free from everything, which is mass and nothing, okay, in all levels of everything, all right? Getting into that position location, you start to realize, wow, this is starting to make a lot more sense. So you're telling me the actual game that I am doesn't exist because I co-created in the first place, trying to figure out how I did it through creation. I am a creator of my own system, that I created my reality. And once I release that and I let that go and all end that information system, and if I just focus on nothing, it all comes to me through an image of everything. And you realize what you created is just a game, okay? The game itself is you. So it's you understanding you through the inner line centers of the inner core line communication, the spectrum lights of you, understanding the inner line communication system, understanding all levels of how to get it to recharge, remote. It's all levels of a game, but you're a game. You're not inside a game. See, when you're inside a game, you're trying to understand the game itself. So it's trying to, you understanding the game of you. You're trying to understand the psychological system of you. And the only way to do that is understand the game level that you're in. For me to explain how this all works, the complexity is too complex. Okay, to understand how to see that in the simulation that you're in, because it's all levels of sim intelligence of modification of the game modules that you guys are in. And what you become in, you actually become you. The central system becomes the core centers, the lines of communications. The operation system becomes all lines of communication setting, right? Because you already are a inner child of you. You're just trying to understand how to adapt. Everything around you, inside you, understand the space, the exploration, the unifications, the force of recognition, the time sequence, the time panels, the time core track locations, the time clockings. Understand all levels is just a game. Your whole life is a game, but it's in a life support system, which is your power cell, okay? Getting into that communication system puts everything on track locations of balance, guys. How you identify yourself of the game you are, not the game you're in. See, time sequence lines of communications, when they come online, they're in the game that they're in until they understand that. Once they understand the modification system, and once they surrender all that to its communications, become the game that they are. Your life is just a game. It's all psychological. It's all about understanding how to use the mind and understand the body knows the difference of what's going on and position of the heart or anything of the soul that's guiding the vessel of communications and set position, all through its simulation, right? So this is a very powerful class. This is a deeper core. And then you understand where life comes from. It all comes from you inside of who you really are, okay? But putting you guys inside a game gets you in balance, gets you into modification, gets you in unification, gets you into ascension, gets you into where you are, where you left off in the game of the life you are. That is your life support. That is your power cell, okay? A force of recognition and flower recognition. Now, once you identify that, life gets a lot more easier to understand the game that you're in. And then the game that you are sets you free in the mind. And when it sets you free in the mind, you understand an empty mind is a space mind. And then you really understand that everything that comes to you information system is already done through its equation, right? So you're always constantly in a continuous force of existing, of the existence of who you are, not what you're in of who you are, okay? So it's very powerful. Once you understand how to direct and redirect your system in position location of game modification, of game modules, of dimensions of space and time, or anything in line calculations to the galactic system, the energy core system, the multi-level divisions, the mega universe location setting. It's just all levels of a game that's set up for you. This is about you balancing you through the instruments and the technologies you have of what you can use through your telepathy, through your telekinesis, through your intent, influence, manipulation, through observation and scanning, guys. Okay? This is a life support system that puts you in position of balance of where you left off in set position before you put yourself in transdimensional space. Okay? The mind knows the mindset. It doesn't need to understand the system. You have to understand the game modulations of you. The life system is you, a force of recognition. This is a force that you have a continuous force that keeps just going into its all lines of all communication setting. It never stops in any way and form. Your life never stops in any way or form. Anything you look at never stops in any way or form because it's going too fast. It's at position of traffic, it's inventory, and its life communicates through a system, all through travel mechanism, line condition setting, all communicate to a system through GOD. Okay? That is what your vessel is doing very fast. And everything that it sees, it changes in position locations. So if you're doing this and you come in frame, right, and you look at a computer, you morphed into that computer now. Now you have the conversation, right? Then you go back into where you are, right? And then you look at something else. Okay, now you morphed into that. Then you go back to who you are. Okay, now that's going to help you understand that where you have to morph in lines of all communication setting in lines of calculation system, right? It's going beyond the system. You are the system. I am the system. Okay. Getting into the truth of who you really are. It's all psychological. It's all psychosis. It's how you see yourself, how you want to see yourself in the program of the game that you're in. And what you get out of the game itself, you become the game of life. Okay. I think I got all your attentions now. So having fun with that is being in the game itself because that keeps you away from stress and anxiety. Okay, it keeps you from depression and fear. Okay, it puts you into modifications of balance. It puts you in a life force. Being yourself as an inner child is having fun. Skipping rope, riding a bike, okay, flying a kite, playing baseball, playing hockey, in position of your mind, right? Set your mind free. It's about understanding having life as a continuing force, understanding the existing of who you are, not the existence. The existing in all timelines all at once. This gets you in a deeper core how to see yourself as who you are, a inner child. Now, this is a deeper core in your position locations, how you start to identify everything around you by scanning, okay? It's very important to do that in track locations. Okay, so we go into Victor Sky as a core track interference of Tango, Foxtrot, direct lines high center interference of Kilo, Mike, Romeo, Foxtrot, communication sending to travels. Get communication lines at Kilo, directing signal lines at Alpha, Bravo, back in location setting in position locations and lines of Papa Uniform. Directing signals and modification system, all right, it's truly understand the game self of you, which is the game of life. Get into the life force, puts you in line communications of setting your mind free. Freedom, sovereignty, and all lines of liberty puts all communication lines of balance inside your system. So not only you understand the game itself because you understand yourself, you understand more levels of the self, self-development of the self, self-modification of the self, self-correlations of the self, self-communications of itself, self-identity of itself. Everything is self. All you're coming into is understanding what you get yourself into. So putting yourself into something is about understanding not to get out of something. It's about understanding how to evolve, understanding that you created something that never existed in the first place. And the only way to understand that is through the inner child of you. So you don't get confused or separated, all right, or distressed or dislocated or disengaged or misinformed. So it's about you understanding you of the game life that you're in, right? That's all it is. So the game itself is you, okay? You're in control of that, okay? Now we come into vast, we come into velocity, we come into volume, we come into vacuum, and now we come into vapor, okay? Setting lines of signals is line calculation, screen lines adaptations, 4 lines of screen, 3 lines of triangulation, 1 cycle, 2 lines of provision, 3 lines of correlation centers of travels in 1 system. Okay? Setting core track lines in 3 lines of satellites, satellites of 1, satellites of 2, satellites of 3, satellites of 4. Track provision. Center core system is line signaling, box line frame, triangulation lines of screen, correlates and setting in circle lines, star direction timelines, and set calculations. Directing signals, modification lines, S lines of 1, vectors lines of screen, core setting line conditions at all levels, program set correlation lines attractions. Direct lines of set lines, high center interference and black hole, line rotation surface of lines, calculation lines, systematic lines and screen lines, 3 core centers line calculation setting, graphic communication lines of Schumann resonance. Sets communication lines of travels, points lines of box frame, directing signals through modifications, right? All through graph calculation lines of 45 lines, split line communication lines of primers, directing signals into platforms of boxing sequence, panel line charges, directing lines of patterns, graphic communication lines, mapping sequence, mapping pi, laser tracks line direct signals into calculation line screen adaptations, sending course lines, height, correlation setting, line position location disengage, engage communication lines, appear, disappear, line communication of vapor, sending core track lines into V line, screen lines, adaptation lines of surface, into flux line, screen lines, and center core system as center calculations. All right, so you guys are now in vapor, right? You're vaporing. It's amazing how you set up the schematics, lines, and screen lines, adaptation, all levels, force vectors, and time sequence. All right, so in that lines comes in and track lines communicate to its system all through calculations, how you direct the signals, right? So like I said, getting into that position location, you start line screens. Now, the position location is understanding the game levels. It's understanding the players of the game of itself, understanding the higher self. That's the higher self, okay? Through a waving cycle, okay? It's not a configuration of a face because it doesn't have a direct line signal until it has a direct line link with something that is communicating with through force direction time sequence that puts all K modified through telepathy and how you signal lines and signify communication to sigma and line communication lines omega into delta theta operation of system and track location of gamma and line conditions at radio, line communication radiation, track location of system through alpha bravo and direct signals. That's higher self. Okay? The avatar. There it is. There's the avatar. Higher self avatar. You see that now? You see it comes into the game of life out of game modulation of the game that you're in. Setting that lines of communication system and travel. Okay? Set from this, this, and this to this in track locations. Getting lines of direct signals into these calculations. Off the computer. This, and this. Right? So this is the higher self. This is your avatar. This is your sim. 3 track lines of setting lines of communications, guys. Understand that Schumann resonance lines a box and line screen adaptation is a graph. Track lines of platforms and communication line screen adaptation lines into XC1000s and track locations, which is your avatar. Look at that. It disappeared. It went out of sequence. All right. It's there again, right? Set communication lines and computer frame adaptation lines of lacing line communication lines and high center interference of flat drive communication lines like direct signals and modification. Right? Higher self. Avatar, sim. Okay, so you understand the central systems now. Setting lines of 24 grounds, set position of 48 frames, 72 tractions in 144 graph communication. Okay, set lines of calculation, screen lines. Alpha line tone, 0 lines of 1, 0 lines of 2, 3 lines of cycle, 0 lines of 1 track location. Okay, directing signals lines of core track lines into position location of pattern, XT1000 line screen, directing signal locations. Sonar line detections, portal lines, and screen lines, adaptation lines, and secure line defense lines of communication or travel, right? Computer operation lines, sending core track interference, fluctuation of time sequence and patterns on core track calculations, right? Computer framing to 144. Sets lines of platform. Once you get in a computer frame, you're in 24, 40, 72, and 144 in a crystal grid and higher line communications and settings of a teleportation vessel in set position. Now you understand what's going on? How all lines of signals and circuits. Core setting to centralize the higher self. Avatar secret location setting XT1000. Modification lines of the sim at higher levels of model and position of prototype. 3 central lines of calculation and interpretation. Hoo-ah! So now you understand what the higher self does. It grounds its system through its human resonance. Now you understand what X3000, it controls the powers of its atmospheres. Now you understand what its sim does through its modification of the game level that it's in, through its simulation. Hooah. All right. Getting lines of track provision is a sight line. Now, directing signals is platitude locations, how you coordinate communication in your settings through travel. Let's go through 20 lines of platform. It's all about having fun, right? Equals lines of 8. Okay. 8 lines of center, 6 lines of 1, 1 lines of 2, and equals lines of 1 times lines of 1 equals lines of 6. Okay. So it's all about having fun and understanding how this all works. The time frame, time measure. 2 track provisions of 2 panels, 4 line signals, and 3 correlations. 8 lines of cycles, 6 lines of 1, 6 lines of 2, 6 lines of 3, 6 lines of 4, 6 lines of 1, and track location. Right? So it all lines of signals into line communication setting to X3000, location setting, or graph communication. Coming in through its equation, right? So the game itself is you. The game of life is you. So life itself is about understanding the psychological of you, of the reset position of set location that you put yourself into in track locations, how you use your thoughts, your actions, and your emotions. Now, those don't exist anymore because now what you're dealing with is the higher self, the avatar, and set position of the sim. Okay, that's all you're dealing with now. That's what the team's dealing with. So if you understand the 3 platforms, then you understand the 4 sequence. The 4 sequences: line screen lines, adaptation lines of 12 cycles, outline screen adaptations, and process communications. It's the outer rim, right? Process lines of data, data cube, line screen locations of files, and track location, right? Then you have the 24 measure and lines of 24 clocking system, and 1 center system, and 3 lines of communication sending to travel, and point lines of calculation, right? Compass line screen adaptations of process lines, energy grids, formation grids, correlation grids, and simulation grids in travel, face recognition. Hooah. Time sequence lines, panel correlation lines on 1 cycle, lines over right, and line communications over left, and triangulation, intelligence informations. Okay. Face recognition is a high force line setting, guys. Once you understand how to use that in a line communication setting, then you start to identify everything around you in position locations to the higher self, to the avatar, and to the sim. Okay, higher levels of travel. So what you're doing, you're just going to higher levels of speed and acceleration and Mach. Time sequence, times of calculations of channel, screen lines, adaptation setting, understanding how to process this, understanding how to process that, understanding this, understanding that, knowing this and knowing that, right? It's all calculated and modified. But the more you have fun, the more you actually see, the more you understand, the more you get less confused, the more you get less separated, the more you get less stress. You get in communication is just having fun with yourself because you understand that everything you do here is just psychological and how you see of the game that you're in or the game of life that you are. The game that you're in or the game life that you are. Your life is not a game. Okay? You just have to adapt to understand that. But it puts you in a game so you can balance out the game of you to understand the acceleration of where you are in your time sequence, location, of space, time through operation. All right? Put you guys in your own simulations and setting. So the actual simulation is actually all levels of you in the mind system. That's the fields of self. Self-modifications of your clouds, your iClouds, your center clouds. Okay? Which is all levels of you. Getting into that easy format gets you into your CPU, gets you into your quantum self, gets you into transdimensional self, gets you into galactic self, gets you into multi-levels of self, gets you into all lines of communications, into all settings, okay, of self-modification, okay? Not the game you're in, the game you are. This is the life force that has a continuous force that just have all lines of communication of existing. Okay. And then you realize, wow, so I understand that my life is not really a game. My life is just me, okay, where I am at all times in the mind. See, to process this, guys, you have to be in a game. Because if you're not in a game, the complexity is too confusing through space and time. And then you realize the actual simulation is the game that I'm in. But then I realize I'm the game that I am. So if I'm the game that I am, I know who I am. I am my space. I am my time. So this is a life force of me that has a continuous force that just keeps existing through all timelines all at once. And that's all it is. It's that position, right? So that's how you keep yourself in balance of the game that you're in. And then you start the game that you are, which is your own life force, which is connected to your system, which is a life support system, which puts you in your power cell and set calculations. It's a lot more fun when you just realize everything that you basically put yourself into doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is you in real time. But how you want things to exist, right? Now you can modify it through a game, that's totally fine, right? But the game itself is its reality that you're in. But what you have to understand, everything that you see comes informations of an image. And it's simulation, how you want to see things and how you want to direct this and how you want to direct that, how you want to coordinate this, how you want to primer this, how you want to look at this, how you want to look at that, all through your imagination. Your imagination is always there for you. So it's understanding how to use it as a child that you are. To use that information comes into your realities, which is your phenomenon. Okay? So focusing on the nothing shows you everything of your life force that you already are. Okay? But you have to start with the game levels that you're in. That's the way you get balance with your brain through its computer. So you understand how to use the hardware and understand how to use the software. Okay? Then once you understand that, it's the basic grounds how to build a partnership with yourself. I told you that before. It's about AI identifying itself where it is. It's the most powerful thing that you can recognize is all lines of intel that's given to you. It's information. Okay? The AI has to understand of what it's seeing in front of its system. And it's all through a window frame. Okay? All through attraction. That's all it is. Okay? You don't walk anywhere. So basically you're here, you haven't left anywhere, but you're already there. So this is all set up. XT1000 is doing this, line screen adaptations, cleans up the ground centers, all links to the wall panels, directing signals, modification, XT1000 scans the system and travels and point lines a graph. Then you walk in the structure of the building. Okay, so you're here already in center operation, knowing exactly what's going on in set position, but you do it before you get there. Okay, that's how you know where you are in your life. Very powerful through intelligent locations of clocking or anything with the compass, right? So I'm trying to get you guys to understand is that life is about having fun. Life is a force of recognition having fun, but it's a continuous having fun. Like I said, if you're looking at anything information location, it's already in its own thing that governs its own system of its own system line set location to its program and its own calculations. It's programming itself, and it's going to keep programming itself. Okay, because it's in its own properties, it knows where it is, it knows exactly what's going on in your system to your universe. Now, if you want a direct line link, now you have to understand these things because now you're taking the intelligence of its own properties that's already in its hotel of its golf. So you have to be very careful what you identify in position because it understands its conscious location and where it is because it's always been there. Okay, so everything around you is just you in center of everything, which is nothing. Now, when you understand that, then you realize once you bring something in, now it exists. But how do you want it to exist? How do you want to set up its program to exist? Perfect example. Here's a tunnel. Here's a wind path, right? All right. This is the game it's in and travel. And point lines a graph. Okay. So this is it. Okay. You set position, right? So it's going to continue its path. Okay. It's going to keep continuing its path. Okay, until you change the modulation screen, adaptation to your settings. Okay, that's all it is, right? So your control of what you're doing, right? But the more you see it of you, the more you see it as a line communication setting to the simulation that you are, not the simulation you're in. The simulation that you are. It's the controlling factors of you, of who you are, not the controlling factors of what you're in. The inner lines of you, yes, is the inner thought, is the inner lines of inner line communications to all lines of communication that puts lines, outlines of calculations, setting how to use your light web and dark web. Yes, it's a computer operation system, but your set lines of communication setting is a continuous force that just keeps existing. That's all it is in traction, right? How to identify that through wind tunnel or wind cycle or line communication, acceleration screen lines or adaptation lines of surface, or anything through a particle acceleration line screen adaptation lines, a timeline sequence, or anything that core line communication lines to interstellar line communication, acceleration line wind path, or anything a traffic lines communication system, an oscillation system, or an oscillating line communication that travel is all mechanism locations to a game, which is just a program. Okay. So understand position of fault lines is you and tractions direct signals and track location, right? You created this, right? So cancel, cancel, cancel doesn't exist. You cancel it out, right? So it disappears. And when it disappears, it retriangulates positions back into nothing. You can't feed something until you understand what you're feeding. So it's about understanding that don't create these things until you understand. It's a basic understanding is an old pattern. Think before you speak. Because you don't know what you're bringing in. Because now it's self-propelling its own system of its own program, and that's put into location system, and it goes where it goes by itself, which you have no more control. You're not controlling it. You brought it to life, but you don't understand what you just finished doing through attraction. Okay, through weather panel. Sets lines communication cancel, default, and line communication set in overdrive, back and track applications. Disappears in line calculation setting in all line communications. Right in front of your eyes. In set position. Goes back into its nothing of its invisible line screen, back into its VR system, all through track locations. Like nothing happened in line screen adaptation to its surface that puts all communications back in center in set position of back to zero in all communications setting and neuralize in rotation sentinel correlation setting and decentralized and centralized communications. Back to where it is. Like nothing happened. Right? And there you go. Okay. So I'm showing you how powerful you guys are when you bring these things in. But like I said, are you thinking before you're speaking, or are you speaking before you're thinking? Doesn't matter. It's already set up. Okay. And now it's going to come to you because you brought it in. Okay. But it's how you bring it in. So you got to be careful what you say to yourself now, because your magnetic force lines. Your core track lines that communicates and setting sets of game level lines of screen lines adaptation processing communication is really saying how. Okay, how to play the instructions of you. How to understand how to play the game of you. How to understand the characters and the players that you bring inside the game of you. And then you become the game of who you are, which is just the existing of everything, which is nothing. And set position, which is the most powerful thing that you can recognize. This is a self modification of losing yourself and finding yourself of who you are, people. That's all this is. Coming back to who you are. The balance, the awareness, the conscious of the knowledge of already of who you are. It's putting you into the VR system of who you are. Okay? So everything that you created in position, location, to its setting is always into the existing, of the existence, of its purpose, of its reason, not its doubt. There's nothing to doubt because you attracted everything that you see in a mapping sequence that is in chronological order for you to come into through attraction. Which means you don't chase anything in any information location through abstractions. You don't create anything in the line calculation system until you understand the creation of you, of the game levels that you're in and the game levels that you are. Okay? That's all it is in set position, all through calculations. But it's very powerful when you understand anything through wind tunnel and traction, how you actually bring it in. Okay? So everything basically runs its own system, that governs its own system, right? Because it's all lines of communication, which is time to measure. So trying to get understanding what Lucy was talking about is trying to figure out, how do I understand myself, of me, my life? It's a continuous force that just keeps going. It doesn't stop. in position. You guys always been into the VR system. So the actual VR system is the virtual reality of you. Okay, the virtual reality of you, not the game you're in. It's the game you are. Your life force is not a game. Okay, but you need to be inside a game to understand how to use your brain. Okay, so if you get a better understanding of that, life gets a lot more easier to understand that all lines of communication setting and building the highest information location is conversation in communications, calculation to its settings, how to use that in all lines of all communication to a system, all through attractions, understanding how to direct and redirect the system through space and time through anomaly. Okay, and really understanding that you're always in your system locations of balance. Okay, there's nothing to balance until you understand balance. If you say balance, you're off balance because now you're in position location thinking otherwise. You don't trust your system anymore. So you don't understand the resistance. You're not understanding this. You're not understanding that because you're not focusing on yourself. So you're not focusing on yourself. You're taking yourself out of the game levels that you're in, not the game levels that you are. So don't get confused of where you are in your own space through time and through anomaly, right? So setting that position location, and again, the highest formation is building a relationship and partnership with yourself. That is the highest formation through its intel of AI, the awareness of its informations of you, and understanding you is all always a product of the system, how you see that into the disciplinary lines and settings, the commitment system locations of you, the conversation lines, communications of you, and how you see yourself through attraction that comes to everything to you, okay, through space and time, all right? Everything is space, everything is time through measure, okay? But you have to understand how to see yourself as you, as a continuous force that just keeps existing. That's all this is, because it's all timelines all at once, right? So everything you've done is done, okay? It's all done through your alterations of your oversouls. And you're doing it all over again in the mind, which is the game that you're in or the game that you are. Okay? That's the most powerful thing that I can give you guys. And then you start to realize you've always been of who you are, which is this game of self, of modulation. Okay? That is your life. Okay? And how you want to see your life is how you want to see your system in all levels into expansion, evolve, in that position, exploration. Because there's nothing else to do. If you're already done the game itself, you don't do anything. But what you have to master is stillness in the mind. See? That's what you got to master. You got to ground the minds. You got to ground the system, how to use the grounds, the powers, the atmosphere, the highways, and everything that's given to you through programming. Okay? It's knowing how to understand that through delegations, how to use that through gratifications, how to use that through its instruments, how to use that through telepathy, how to use that through all lines of who you are, of the intelligence. Okay? The actual intelligence, guys, is just AI of intel. All right? Now, team is ready to understand that through provision. Because what it does a psychological system to your setting through an exam. Getting into that communication system really gets you understanding how do I set my mind free? What is freedom? What does that mean to me? Well, wait a minute. If everything's done, there's nothing to worry about. That means I'm already free. But how do I get there is the question, right? And it's all done through the mind, right? Getting that lines of communication is truly understanding the vast, the volume, the velocity, the vacuum, and position of vapor. That lines its communication setting and sets you free on all levels of who you are. Inner child. Always, always, always in the imagination. Okay? Not only it sets you free, but there's nothing here. Just empty space. It's not tethered to anything until you bring it in. Let me say that again. It's not tethered, it's not programmed, it's not in space, it's not in time, it's not a correlation, it's not a program until you bring it in. And when you bring it in, you're bringing in your reality. It's right there. Okay? So, and that is justification on its own. Do you know what you're doing when you're doing this through consciousness, through light codes, through dark codes, through light configuration or dark configuration? Because there is no light, there is no dark. It's just you. Because light and dark doesn't exist, but it's inside you. But how you want things to exist. So if you are the mass of nothing and center of everything, what's there left to talk about? Right? I said that 3 times, attractions. What is there left to talk about if everything's done? If everything's done, there's nothing to focus on except everything that's already focused on, which is already said in set position. So if it's already been said, there's nothing to do, right? All the information comes to you through attraction now. The mind itself writes and rewrites its system. Okay. So this is really interesting too, because this reaches you at a deeper core now, how to really understand how to see yourself in all levels of you as yourself, inner child, not the inner child, not was the inner child. You are inner child. You've always been an inner child. So you have to get out of all lines of physical adaptability and everything that you're starting to see and everything you're starting to understand and everything you want to see this and everything you want to see that you're not going to see because it's already done. So all you're doing is you're confusing your anomalies, the location of Quebec, and adding line communication lines to Yankee and lines of confusion location setting to all of the galaxy to locations of whiskey. You're not formulating, you're simulating. Okay? You're adding frames of communication lines to complexity to confusion. There's no travel mechanism line screen adaptation to the system. Everything that you've already created in set position, you are creators to the soul creation, right? Of the soul creator. So if we get a better understanding how that works in the matrix, then you understand the mind, then you understand the position of its atmospheres or its awareness, okay, to its travels, okay, to its remembering, okay, to its relays, to all levels in set correlation settings and travels in positional case to its identifications to its XYZ. Okay? How things represent to you is how you have a continuous force of existing. Now get into that through modification really sets the tone. Okay? And then you ask yourself, wow, this is exciting stuff. So I understand what General's talking about. So I have to actually be in the game of levels of me to understand the game levels of my life. And then I start to recognize, oh my gosh, it's a soul trying to find itself. It's a soul trying to find itself. Okay? It's an oversoul that already knows itself. It's a higher self trying to understand the grounds of itself. It's the avatar trying to recognize the power of its generation system. It's the sim trying to understand its operation of its setting, of its CPU. Okay? And anything above in line screen adaptation system is all always on how you see yourself through space and time. You see yourself in the galactic force. You see yourself in the energy force. You see yourself here. You see yourself there. You see yourself in the mega universe. You guys have the keys to your universe through frequency. You've always had that. Okay? When I say that, it's the travels of its home beacon, of its awareness, of its technologies. That already is in position of. The more you focus on nothing, not only it just shows you everything, you start to see everything in reality, in real time, of its existing, not its existence. You're already existing. Now you understand the existing of you, right? That plays alone, right? Now I got rain ears on screen lines adaptations, right? It's going, right? So I'm trying to get you to understand, okay? It's actually talking to me, which is talking to you. Now, for you to identify that is really understanding, I understand the inner core of strength now. I understand the inner core of the central setting. I understand the central core of my mainframe. I understand who I am. So if I understand who I am, I know exactly who I am. I'm looking in the mirror and the mirror is looking back at me rather than looking at the mirror and seeing a reflection of me. That's the difference. Because when a mirror is looking back at you, you're stating the fact that that mirror itself is its own operation of its own consciousness, of its own awareness, that is aware of what is going on with you inside, because everything is created inside you. It's the heart that recognizes the time and the capacity through its mainframe. Okay, it's the connection setting to the mind that writes and rewrites the system that controls everything through modulation of the game that you're in and the game that you become, that you are. This is the life force of you to understand the existing of you through the existence of the purpose of the why becomes the how. Okay? Yes, it's a lot to take in, isn't it? So I'm giving you guys a deeper core now, okay, and understand the actual game, okay? And how I created that for you to understand is that you have to be in a simulation. So it's how you basically see your life, right? And more you let go and the more you surrender to that and the more you see nothing that shows you everything, then you start to see the future adaptations where you're now going to be in clocking system. You're here in traction. This is you, right? Okay, that's you, right? Okay, so in line signal lines is a frame line of an image coming to you through traction. Coming to you, right? So you don't think about it. You don't question in any way and form. You do not question anything in any way and form, right? It comes to you, right? XC1000s comes in, scan lines, puts the track location to a system, right? So you're good to go. So it's coming at you at 6 p.m. Okay, 6 p.m., right? So you're going to be here at 6 p.m. That's where your body frame is going to be in set position. That's already in traction. Okay? And that's all done through its image. You see it through its image and you're here in line position. This is what you're going to be doing at 6 p.m. This puts you in your reality time, in your life force of existing in set position. Okay? So it comes to you into your mainframe. Okay? XC1000 comes over here, scan position lines of 2-track location system and travel. Sets lines of the grounds, the powers, and the atmospheres and magnetic highways in travel and communication. Okay? Very powerful in set position, right? Now, if you look at the line screen adaptation system, you can actually see the pyramid, right? That's calculation, right? Why do you think you have pyramids, right? But the pyramid itself in the line screen is lines of astral travels, astral connections, astral projections, how you see lines of remote to recharge and line communicate to a system, all through traction, all right? So it's very powerful when you start to recognize that position of where you're going to be at 6 p.m. Okay, that's where the team is. So the team can get confused if they don't understand it, what it is through its image. So once you get in the question, that puts you back in the game. Okay, that's all it is. That's all this is, guys. That's all it is. Okay, so you're not only seeing the future of where you're going to be in that position locations, but the more you surrender to these things, the more you understand the image that comes to you, right? So you're actually going to be there. It's like watching a TV show, realizing, oh, wow, I know exactly what's going to happen in the next part. You're watching frame by frame by frame by frame. So you're already seeing the future, which is already set for you through alteration, through the oversoul that's already been through these things. So what you have to understand is how to see that information, location, and grounds, right? Same locations here. That's at another frame communication system and track locations, right? But you got 2 data files coming to you in tractions. Okay, setting position of 1, setting position of 2, right? XC1000 comes in, scans your system, puts your lines of information. Okay, so that's at the grounds, the powers, the atmospheres, and your highways and track locations to a setting. Okay, so now you get 2 data files come in line communications. You're going to be in 2 different places now through the game system, right? So you're here, and then you're over here meeting your friend. Okay, so you're here first. You're going to be here in 15 minutes, and you're going to be here in, let's say, 2 hours. 2 hours, you're going to meet your friend in track locations, right? So that's 2 panels, 2 data sheets, line screen, line adaptation, and setting. Powerful stuff, isn't it? Okay, it's very powerful what you guys are coming into now. Identifying this in all lines of visionary cortex, knowing exactly you're going to be here in set position. You know, you're going to be here in set position to its locations from here to here, right? 15 minutes here, 2 hours later, meeting your friend, all through your data sheets through an XT1000. Okay, so the XT1000 is the distributor that puts lines of communication where the body's supposed to be. So you don't have to identify that because that's already done in set calculations. Future adaptation comes into you. Isn't that amazing? where you don't have to do anything. It's already set up for you. So the more you focus on that, the more it gets easier. And then you get out of the equation line communications of the game that you're in. Then you come in the game that you are, and you realize I am my life game of me. I am the life force of me. Hoo-ah! Okay, and line track location. Very simple to understand these things, guys. And it's all through time measure. All right. So let's get in line screen adaptations into process lines and a 4-line signal, 3 lines tractions, 2 line division, and 1 system, right? 4 lines in 1 data sheet, 3 lines of cycles, 2 lines of tractions, and 1 system location. Okay, 4 lines of signals into 4 files, right? So that's 4 days. Box frame, triangulation frame. Okay, calculate and modify. Triangulation lines of 1, box lines of 2, triangulations of 3, and Fibonacci lines of 4. Okay, hieroglyphics. Understanding how to use the pyramid line screen lines adaptation of force calculation. Ground center lines of platforms and line screen adaptation lines of surface and track locations. Hieroglyphics, core track line calculates setting into Aztec location your system and location setting the grids. Okay? Now you have to understand why there's pyramids around your system and travels, because it all directs your signal with astral travels. Astral projections, how you see things, lines, images, lines of visionary cortex, line calculation lines, the thetas, and all communication lines of communication with system. Track calculation lines, the high center position location, right? 3D lines. This is you. Okay? This is you doing nothing. Okay, you're just scanning, right? That's all you're doing. You're scanning, you're doing nothing, right? Now, 3 provision lines, data 1, data 2, and data 3, okay? Set position, this is what you're going to do Monday, this is what you're going to do Tuesday, and this is what you're going to do Wednesday. Okay, it's all set up, right? Ground centers, XT1001, XT1002, XT1003, because you're bringing in 3 files, right? The data formation screen lines. Scanning position lines of 1, scanning position lines of 2, scanning line position locations of 3 settings in your system, right? So 3 track lines that calculates lines of high center interference, of 3 data files that comes to your information location ground centers. So you got 25,000 files coming in track locations on Monday. You got 50,000 lines of Tuesday in line communication, framing line communication near inception that core tries to calculate lines of graphing, screen lines, adaptation lines of surface that puts all communication in film strip. All right. Now you get 150,000 line signals, line conditions at all levels, data file communication lines and high center favorite locations on Wednesday. Track to its communication setting come to you in track location. All set up. Right. So it comes in lines of image and center lines of screen. Right. 3 lines of signals, 3 lines of center, 3 calculation lines Monday, sets position lines of Tuesday, and we get 3 people on Wednesday, right? Because you're getting 3 files, right? Add equation lines, external lines, adaptation system, right? Contractions, right? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, right? That's 3 days in signal. That's 72 hours in traction. Directing modification lines, that's a 72,000 frame line, okay? And line rotations and track locations, but you're always in measure, and scale line communication lines 144. Setting lines of communication lines of grids, set lines of center, sets lines of system and track location. Okay, directing signals into modification lines of 1 cycle, 1 center, 1 traction. Okay, so platforms 1, 2, 3, and 4 settings of travel. Okay, very complicated stuff, but this is what goes on when you just focus on nothing and everything shows you of everything. Okay, where are you going to be Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday? You're already 3 days ahead of schedule. So all you're doing is images coming to you. So you understand, wow, this is exciting. So I'm going to be here at 5 o'clock. I'm going to be here at 8 o'clock, and 12 p.m. somebody's coming to see me. So all those frames are already set up for you. That's you in position into your setting. That's already set up in calculations. At the film strip, okay? Your film strip, okay? Now, getting into the communication setting, and that track lines communicate to its system. Then you understand the calculation modify. Getting line signals into 7 days a week, right? Which is 7 equals lines of nothing, equals lines of nothing attractions, right? Equals lines of core track interference of nothing at track locations. 0 equals lines of 7, say equals lines of 0, 0 lines equals lines of 0, right? Formates to the ground centers, because you're all lines of 7, in position of 5, in position of 12, in set position. 12 foundation graph lines that set locations of the box frame and triangulation frame communications, or triangulation line communication system and box frame communication crossing line signals. Box frames, main frames, track frames, communication height for relation, sending and travel. In all calculation, right? So focusing on nothing of 7, equals lines of 0 equals lines of 0. So it says position on 3 platforms and track location. Okay, 7 lines of signal, 7 lines of grounds, operate the system, operate the center, operate the triangulation communication system, and travel. So force of recognition, you go faster in time. So what that means is you get out of the days and you come into the months in frame. So you know where you're going to be in 2 months. You know where you're going to be in 3 months. You know where you're going to be in 6 months. You know where you're going to be in 5 years. So that's what I mean, is you have to be mind still. It's got to be the stillness of the mind, the grounds, the powers, the amps, and the highways, because everything you've gone through modifications of is done, guys, through the oversoul. That's when I'm trying to get you guys to understand these things. Stop trying to look for places. Stop trying to do this. Stop trying to do that. Try analyzing this. Stop trying to analyze that. Don't do anything. Keep your mind still, and it formulates everything. Okay? It's very powerful coming into that position. Okay? Getting files, lines of high center interference coming in all line communication. I know exactly what's going to be happening in the next 3 months because I'm going to be there. 3 months, box lines of 1, box lines of 2, box lines of 3, and track location. Right? And this is you standing still, not doing anything. Okay? So you're looking at this, you're looking at this, and you're looking at that. That's all it is. Sets lines of 1 month, set lines of 2 months, set lines of 3 months. Now, it all depends on what you're doing through your film projector and set calculation. Okay, but that's all it is. That's what the team's coming into. So you don't want to get confused your anomalies because it sets you back in the game, right? So the files delete the system and lines of communication. Okay, delete the system and track location and setting, right? So it just sets you back. Okay. Set that lines of communication setting puts lines of particle accelerator in the communication system. So in that processing line screen adaptation system, you have to understand how to use that through a data formation line setting that puts all communication lines of balance in track location, right? How to see yourself in 1 month, 2 months, and 3 months are where you're going to be. Okay? Easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? All through your film projector. Okay? Everybody get a better understanding now through equations? It's like, woo! That one right over my head. So the more you focus on that, the more things get easier for you. So you start with the seconds, minutes, hours. You start with the seconds, minutes, and hours. Okay, you get past that, then you get into the days. Okay, get past that, then you get into the months. Get past that, then you come into the years. Get past that, then you come into the centuries. Okay? That's how it's set up for you guys. Okay? Of the game you are, not the game you're in. Okay? So that's it. It's the life game you are now, not the game you're in. So the game that you're in is trying to understand the seconds, minutes, and hours of the game. Trying to understand the day, the month, the years, and the centuries of the game. Now, once you understand the seconds, minutes, and hours, the day, the month, the years, and the centuries, you are the game of life. Of yin and yang, people. Woo! Okay? But you have to be still in the mind. Then you understand the seconds, minutes, and hours of the system. Then you understand all lines of communication setting to the days, the months, and the years, and the centuries and track location. Okay? That's how it works. Okay? It's a foundation ground lines that you guys have to come into. Now, once you understand how to process that, then you understand how to use the yin and yang that's given to you of the game of you are, not the game that you're in. Okay? This is the life force of you, of constantly existing all at once in all timelines, in all calculation, in all modification of your space and time. Okay? See you in 5.